Hi guys, welcome back to NautiStyles. First of all, happy holidays and happy end of this crazy year. You have been asking us to make a video about Power Catamaran versus Sail Catamaran, pros and cons for quite a while, and I finally got Rico to sit down with me and do this. But before we start, we want to give back to you guys. So to celebrate, we are doing a naughty and nice giveaway. The rules of the giveaway are all posted in the description underneath the video. Just black on white, super clear. Click on the link below and follow the instructions of how enter the giveaway, and you'll have a lot more options to have extra bonus giveaways if you follow a few extra steps. All right, I got my Santa suit on. What are we giving away?
You have your Santa suit on. Where's the bag with the presents?
Okay.
There it is.
I didn't have like a proper Santa bag, so I'm using my stall sack dry bag.
It's actually a dry sack.
Dry sack. My stall sack dry sack to do the presents, which I think is quite appropriate for naughty and nice giveaway. All right, what do we have in here? We've got a naughty cap. We have lots and lots of stuff, you guys. Tascam studio headphones. Two of those, so you have two chances to win. Ladies, for your ladies, we have an awesome selection of amazing natural products. Oh God, there's so many good things in here. We also have this beautiful Jekyll and Hyde watch. Thank you, Jekyll and Hyde, for this amazing giveaway. Unisex, beautiful. An awesome selection of NYX cosmetics. Basically, I would call it a mermaid makeup bag. There's some really cool mermaid colors and really fun one. And, oh, this one's heavy. Oh, what is this? This is Helly Hansen special duffel bag made for sailors. It's really cool. It just basically kind of unfolds into itself. You can zip it up and then you just unfold it. You can hang it up and all your stuff is just beautifully hanging.
How's the thing called?
It is called
Heli Pack System.
Yeah, check it out, you guys. These are all our naughty and nice giveaways. We're wishing you lots of luck. Check out link in the description below, and I hope you win. The giveaway will be open for 3 weeks, so you have a lot of chances to get this going. All right, guys, we are finally doing this. We are finally talking sailing catamaran versus power catamaran. You have been asking for so long to do this, so here it is. But before we start, a huge shout out to Crown and Caliber. Yeah. We are proud ambassadors of Crown and Caliber, and all the cool watches you see us wearing are compliments of Crown and Caliber.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right.
I love them, by the way.
Whenever we do a tour of a sailing catamaran, very often you guys say like, well, what's the big deal? Just put in some bigger engines and you're gonna have a fast sailing catamaran. So you have best of both worlds. Not so fast.
Yeah, it doesn't really work like that. A proper motor catamaran has a completely different looking hull shape than a sailing catamaran. Sailing catamaran, first of all, has a keel. Secondly, it's kind of like equally shaped from the keel to the bow, from the keel to the stern, or at least similarly shaped. A power catamaran, completely different situation. And then also on the sailing catamaran, you have a theoretical hull speed. Just to put in bigger engines is not gonna work. Like, yes, you get
well, it's gonna work, you put it in, yeah, but it's not gonna give you, you will max out. There is a hull speed max out for a sailing catamaran. It's built that way that it doesn't go faster than a certain speed.
There are some builders which using sailing hulls, modify them a little bit and call them a power cat.
Same mold they build.
Exactly. If you are interested in a power catamaran, you wanna make sure you have a power catamaran hull, proper hull made for higher power to be able to plane the boat and get a higher speeds.
Basically what we're saying is, if we talk about this power versus sail, we're going to talk about when the builders that actually build them differently, right?
Yeah.
So just to make that clear so you guys understand what we're talking about. I was trying to figure out how we're gonna do this. So what Rico and I did, we actually, separate from each other, no peeking, did our own lists of what we thought separately, pros and cons of sailing catamaran versus power catamaran for us and our personal opinion. We haven't seen our list, so we just swapped and we're gonna just read off of each other's list and explain.
And start with my first point.
Okay, so sailing catamaran first.
Yeah.
Pros. Less fuel.
Well, first of all, the engines are smaller than on a power catamaran, so there's number one why you use less fuel. Secondly, if you're motor sailing, you're using less fuel than if you would be just powering. And if you're purely sailing, you're using no fuel at all. So sailing catamaran, definitely saving on the fuel cost. Your first point, unlimited range.
Which is basically saying the same thing. You do have a truly unlimited range when it comes to sailing, because, you know, if you can figure out a way of getting yourself somewhere if you completely run out of fuel and your engines go out.
Two options for propulsion. So good for emergencies.
So good for emergencies.
It's like the sail.
Yeah, you have a second option if both of your engines give out, which is kind of weird, because if you still have one engine, you can still get somewhere.
Oh yeah, easy.
Yeah, so with having sails, obviously you have that second option.
Yeah, you have a backup.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice peace of mind for sure. Silent moving.
Yeah, no engine sound, no nothing. If you're under sail, you know, and don't have a generator running or solar panels, you don't need to run a generator. It's completely silent. The only thing you hear is wind and water sound.
That is a really nice thing about sailing.
And, which I didn't put down, no smells.
Oh, that's a great point.
No
No fumes
engine
at all.
fumes at all.
No fumes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great point. I mean, one can argue you can end it up with electric engines and we'll have a silent propulsion and no fumes. So yes.
And it's going there.
Yeah, correct. So
slowly.
while we're talking about both, we are obviously talking about power catamarans, not electric engines, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're talking just pure diesel
combustion
catamarans for the sakes of this argument.
Cheaper to buy.
Okay, yeah, they're cheaper. Why are they cheaper? And I know people always say, like, what's the big deal? I mean, the engines can be that much more money. Why are the power catamarans so much more expensive?
They just are. Especially big engines come with a pretty hefty price tag. And everything needs to be prepared for that as well in the hull. And there's just a lot more going into that than on a sailing catamaran, where you have, I mean, just an average, I would say, on anything between 40 and 50 feet. What are you really using? 75 horsepower each side, if that. Mostly even smaller than that.
There's no like real rule. It depends, because so many catamaran builders that are semi-custom or custom obviously can do a lot different engine packages for you. But it seems like it is somewhere like 25-30% cost-wise in terms of like what it would cost you versus sailing catamaran versus power catamaran. What would you say? Let's say a sailing catamaran is $1 million, same range. Power catamaran, same size.
Probably like somewhere between like 1.2 to 1.5.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You're probably looking at least 30% price difference. So yeah, it is a lot more expensive. Engine service cost is less.
Yes.
On the sailing catamaran.
Smaller motors, smaller materials, less oil, it's just less labor. So the maintenance cost on a smaller motor is always going to be less than on the big engine.
Would you say that if you are doing it yourself, like if you're, let's say, sailing the world and you're doing it yourself, is it easier or is it the same if you're doing it yourself?
It's also easier.
It is easier on
well, I mean, it depends, like depending on the boat, because usually
if you have good access, let's say you have good access.
Okay, if you have good access on the big motor versus good access on the small motor, the smaller one is going to be easier.
Got it. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Could add solar panels on the mast. That's true.
Yeah, so you have a mast, and this is a new technology, which for the first time we've only seen like 2 years ago. They're adding solar panels onto the actual mast, so you do have some options. There are some limitations with the shadowing and stuff like that. But that's a pro. There's a con that comes with it, but it is a pro that you don't have on the Power Cat because you don't have the mast.
Yeah, we have seen that it was on the carbon fiber mast, and they actually infused it into the carbon fiber mast. I thought that was really cool to take advantage of the entire surface of the mast, which is massive on a big catamaran. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
So now we're gonna go over the pros of the Power Catamaran.
Yeah. Shall I read yours first?
Go.
Okay, number one, no mast, more open space in the salon.
Yeah, well, you don't have a mast going through the salon, so it's completely open space. You don't have this massive thing. The bigger the boat, the bigger the mast. So it's kind of nice.
True, true.
So your layout possibilities are a little bit more open.
You're more flexible.
Yeah. Okay, you have, this is a short one.
Oh.
Faster.
Well, that's it. There you go.
Mine is very detailed.
It is faster. You have bigger motors.
Okay, mine is number 3 is basically that, but like way more detailed. Should we go over it?
No.
What?
So, anyways.
What are the benefits of it being faster? Who cares? Where are you going?
Well, I mean,
it's an argument. Like, where are you going? Well, why do you need it? Why do you need a faster engine? Actually, it is something that people really don't talk about, and Rico and I have experienced, and it is a pretty big one for me. So Rico and I had an experience in the Caribbean when we were in the storm system and on the sailing catamaran, and it just kept circling and hitting us.
And you see it coming.
You could see it coming at you, and it's hit us again. And then we were like, okay, we're through it, and then it will circle again and hit us again. And we got hit with the same system like 4 times, which was really crazy. And with the Power Catamaran, because you see it coming before the conditions even get there, you can kind of like outrun the system. You have an option of faster speed. Yes, you're going to burn a little more fuel. But for us in that experience, should have been an 1.5 hour passage, ended up being 4.5 hour passage because we just couldn't outrun the storm and it kept pushing us. So that is a big one for me. What else do I have in there? You can get to destinations faster, so it depends how you use the boat.
Well, I mean, obviously, faster speed.
Of course, but people say like, who cares, right? I mean, like, who cares if, you're sailing? Yes, I agree. Sometimes the journey is the fun of it. Sometimes you have some certain time frames or tides, or you're limited in some certain way that you want to get to a certain destination in a certain amount of time. You are limited with the speeds of the sailing catamaran, which you can just go and do that real quick with a Power Catamaran.
Well, also out of my experience, like when I've done transfers of boats, long distance transfers, we're talking like whatever 1,000 miles of distance, and you have a origin and a destination, and that's where you want to go, and you don't want to start tacking for days at a time, and it's just unfavorable wind conditions, or you're ending up mostly motoring or motor sailing. Maybe unless you cross an ocean, that might be a little different, but if you really do just coastal cruising and all that kind of stuff, most of the guys I know which own sailboats ending up motor sailing or motoring. If you take that in consideration, you're kind of being like, well, maybe you should get a powerboat.
For example, where we live in the Pacific here, a lot of people go down to Mexico and come back up. The coming back up, you're
motoring.
You just don't have the winds and don't have the right angle, and the angle with a catamaran is a little different than with a sailboat.
You can't go as close to the wind as you can with a monohull.
Yeah, it's still great. Again, it just depends how you want to use the boat.
Yeah.
And where you are using it and all these different things. It is a pro in terms of a Power Catamaran. Just, we're devil's advocate here, giving you all the options. What else do I have in there? Yeah, so with a faster boat, you can go faster through cuts with strong currents. You can be more comfortable that you're not getting pushed. I mean, with a bigger sailing catamaran, you don't have that problem.
Any sailboat is a trolling boat. Like they are not coming up on plane.
Yeah.
Unless you have a foiling sailing boat, which is obviously like a racing boat or whatever, different story. And with a Power Catamaran, if someone is extremely uncomfortable, gets seasick, whatever, you can speed up for 10, 15, 20 minutes, go up on plane. Mostly people are just seasick, getting better.
100%. That totally works. Test it out. It totally works. So it is definitely a big one, and that's what I have. Sometimes you just have strange, like weird wind waves, kind of a washing machine, and you just can't go faster with a sailboat. You just go 15 knots with a Power Catamaran, and you're riding over the waves, and everyone's feeling good on board. Even if you do it sometimes for 5 minutes, and everyone's feeling great, and no one's getting seasick, it's worth it. So that's definitely a pro.
Yeah.
Solid foredeck. Yes. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, like Power Cats usually have a solid foredeck instead of trampolines, so you gain more usable space. I mean, yes, you can use a trampoline on a sailing cat, but it's not really, you can put any kind of furniture there, or you can put a sun lounger there or whatever. So I think on a Power Cat, you just gain a little extra space.
And what is a point of a trampoline? We get asked that all the time. Please explain.
Well, on a sailing catamaran, like...
And why the Power Catamarans don't have it. Don't have to have it.
First of all, Power Catamaran, once you speed up, it goes up, and then at some point you're on plane, and you have faster speeds, so you don't get air and water trapped between the pontoons, which needs to escape somewhere. So big waves, for example, a sailing boat usually tends to dip into the waves. The bow gets a little heavier with the sails up and load on the sails. So the air needs to go somewhere. So, you know, when the waves are crashing between the pontoons, that needs to move somewhere so the air can escape, but also the big waves can just go through the netting, and it doesn't get trapped underneath and creates an uncomfortable kind of air pocket in between the pontoons and the belly of the catamaran.
Uncomfortable, also dangerous. It creates stress cracks on the hulls.
Of course, yeah.
Which, whenever you buy a catamaran, you need to, you obviously need to make sure that it doesn't have that or has very little of that, because that is part of that, just that slapping and that too much tension. Okay.
No rigging, so bigger flybridge.
Kind of a big deal. Because you don't have all of that setup. So
yeah, no winches, no lines.
Because your mast is usually kind of like in the front, right?
Of the
flybridge.
Yep.
So that whole space, which is sometimes many feet, is gone. Like you could put some cushions there maybe, but it's not really like a deck space that you could just, really use. I mean, there's a way to use it.
And we're talking obviously big catamarans right now when we talk about flybridge, but there are also many catamarans that don't even have a flybridge.
Don't even have a flybridge, right.
But even there, you would have a completely clean top, which either can hold solar panels or layout cushions or whatever you want to put up there.
That's very true. Clean exterior. That's what you just said.
Yeah,
no lines.
Appearance-wise. A sailing catamaran always is going to have a lot more stuff like side stays, fore stays, back stays, sails, lines, winches, like all that fun stuff, which is cool when you're sailing and you need it, but the Power Catamaran is just going to look cleaner.
But it also all requires maintenance, right?
Yes.
Okay.
If you do it right. No maintenance on sails and rigs. Yeah.
So, and everything else, the winches need to be, I mean, there's so many components, like the side stays, like you gotta check things.
Gotta clean and grease the clutches, and
it's
I mean, there's
a lot
just
of
a lot of work, yeah.
I think sailing catamaran is a lot more full-time job. It's
yeah,
just
I think
it's
a
lot more parts to maintain versus like the bigger engine, more often engine service you would do on the Power Catamaran.
Yeah.
I just thought of something as well. Because of all these different things with all these different parts that has to do with sailboats, you also carry, if you're sailing like really cruising, you're carrying a lot of parts.
Ton of spare parts.
Which you don't do, I mean, you do carry other parts on the powerboat, but it seems like it would be less. Am I wrong?
Yeah, you definitely carry a lot more spare parts on the sailing vessel than on a powerboat, I think.
So that's just also something to consider. Less draft.
Well, Power Catamaran doesn't have a keel. Yes, you have the props, which are a little bigger. The rudders are usually smaller than on the sailing catamaran because you don't need that big of rudders. So your draft is less than on a sailing cat.
Yeah, that is something to consider. Depends on which waters you're sailing. If you're sailing here in the Pacific, who cares?
Matter.
But if you're sailing in the Bahamas, for example, and you want to go super close to the beach and feel super comfortable doing it, Power Catamaran definitely gives you a little. The bigger catamaran gives you a little bit more. More options with that.
No chance of lightning strike. Well, I wouldn't say no, but at least less.
If you're in the mooring field or anchorage with any other sailboats, I would say you have a pretty minimal chance.
Yeah.
I mean, if anybody's got a mast and you don't, there's a better chance they're going to get hit.
They get hit than you get, yeah.
Big one for me. I've been in some lightning storms and it is kind of freaky when it's lighting up all around you, just circling and circling all night, and like I can't really sleep well. I'm a little freaked out by it. I mean, we know someone whose sailboat was struck by lightning twice, which is super rare. That's what people ask, like what happens when the lightning strikes?
Yeah, well, it shortened out or burned all the electronics, pretty much.
All the electronics are gone. Yeah, like
everything had to be replaced.
They were safe, they were okay, but imagine you're in the middle of somewhere and this happens and all your electronics are gone.
Yep.
Yikes. Yeah, so that's something to consider.
Well, next one. No fear of breaking a mast in a storm.
It does happen. It happens more than maybe people even think. It does happen that something breaks, a sail would break, and and you're just, it's always in the worst conditions that this happens, and you know, people go overboard, and it just depends where you are in life in terms of physical condition.
Well, that's true.
You will have bad weather, and you will, on the sailboat, ended up using a sail, even in sometimes really bad conditions, just to stabilize the catamaran, right? How do you stabilize a catamaran, sailing catamaran with a sail?
For any sailboat, if your sail's up, it's more stable.
Yeah, so
and
you might have to...
you want to sail with a sailing boat in general. Sometimes if you go straight into the wind, of course you can't do that, and then that wouldn't stabilize you anyways.
No, I'm talking about the bad weather.
Oh, bad weather, you just maybe keep a little storm sail up or something just to keep the boat stable, a little more stable.
It just, anything can go wrong, and it's just more things that could go wrong with the masts and the sails, and you would have to deal with it. So if you're not in the physical condition to be comfortable doing this in the bad weather, being out there, then maybe that would not be the right thing to do.
Yeah, one of your points?
Yes.
You got no rig, so more space for solar panels on the hardtop, and no sails, shadow issues. It's a good point. It's a really good point, actually. Like, you can plaster your hardtop completely with solar panels. You don't have that much shadow issues with the solar panels. That's a big plus, for sure.
Next Power Catamaran Pro is lower clearance.
And that's what you have too.
Bridge clearance.
Yeah. So
why is that important?
Well, especially thinking of the inner coastal with all the drawbridges.
Inner coastal waterways in Florida, not in
the entire inner coastal.
For those who are not from the United States.
Yeah, exactly. So you have, with the Power Catamaran, obviously no mast, so you have a lower bridge clearance. So some of the drawbridges you probably can get through or under without even requesting to raise the bridge up.
Right, so that is definitely a big deal. Also depends where you keep the boat. Sometimes you will have some kind of a fixed bridge depending on the size of the Power Catamaran and sailing catamaran. You might not be able to take any kind of sailboat in there, but might be able to get in on the smaller Power Catamaran. So that's definitely something to consider depending on where you're planning to boat.
For sure. So kind of that was that were our points. I mean, of course we have the cons.
Yeah, the cons are kind of the opposite. So we're not going to go through all of that again.
Can't always sail perfectly like people think.
Cannot.
Not straight to your destination. Well, yeah, that's correct.
That's what Rico was talking about. Sometimes people just think when you own a sailing catamaran, you're fabulously, silently sailing everywhere you go. That is really, truly not true, you guys.
Unless you really have no schedule at all. Like, it doesn't matter when you arrive anywhere, then yes, you can.
And if you're cool, you know, sailing at 2 knots somewhere really, really slowly sometimes, and just like, or tacking the whole time, so you're, instead of taking an hour, you take 3 hours, because this is what you're doing.
And mostly you'll be uncomfortable.
That's fine, but you just got to keep that in mind, that you're not always gonna have wind to sail.
Correct. And at some point also, you got to keep in mind, there is a little bit of a laziness coming in too. I know so many people that own sailboats or sailing catamarans, and they're literally just going the 2 miles or 4 miles to the next destination. And what are they doing? Like, in most of the time, they're just motoring because they're too lazy to open the sail back, to raise the mainsail, to do all that what comes with it, just because they just don't feel like doing it anymore.
What are they doing? They're motoring.
They're motoring.
And it's just the truth, they are motoring.
And so. I've even caught myself, depending what kind of distance I'm going, it's like, okay, you know what, let's just put the jib out and motor sail, it's like, no, it's a dumb thing to do, but sometimes you just don't feel like doing all the work steps.
To sum it up, as we always say in the videos, it all comes down to application and where you're going to use the boat and intended usage. So that's really important.
Agree.
So if your intended usage is to sail the world as economical as possible, sailing catamaran.
I would go with sailing catamaran.
Hands down.
For sure. You can do it with a Power Catamaran too, if it's like laid out like whatever, like a Nordhaven, like a long distance trawling catamaran. Then yeah, you can do it. You have more fuel cost for sure, no question about it. But I think boat of choice would be a sailing catamaran. Yeah,
I think so. And in a few years, when the electric engine, solar, like all of that it's kind of there, you guys. It's really getting there, but it's not quite 100% there.
Well, also lithium-ion batteries, they've made a big jump in the last, let's say, 5 to 10 years. It really, the car industry helped, obviously. They put a lot more resources into development, solar panels getting more efficient, so you get a lot more power from the sun. So I think give it another...
It's really changing. Like 3-4 years, we're going to have a different conversation about this.
I agree.
But right now, if that's your goal, sail the world at the lower cost, sailing catamaran for sure. If you have, let's say, your plan is cruising the Caribbean or cruising the Mediterranean or using it for weekends, or you have destinations in mind that you only have a week, every 3 months to go to your boat, which is you keep in the Caribbean, and you want to hop certain islands. Well,
maybe a Power
Catamaran would be a good option, because you really can get to where you want to get to on schedule. Yep. You can still do it with a sailing catamaran, but you do have limitations.
For me personally, I'm on a lot of different boats. I drive a lot of different boats, catamarans, monohulls, power, sail. I know there's always this kind of hate going on between...
Not hate, rivalry.
Well, some of you understand that there's some kind of hate going on too. Anyways, between power and sail, I think it's total BS. Any day on the water on power or sail or monohull or catamaran is a good day spent, in my opinion. So, whatever it is for you, it's perfectly fine with me.
Yeah, don't hate, you guys. It's different usage for every boat. We love sailing, and we live on a power motor yacht because it is more space. It is a lot more livable space, and a few other reasons, but we love doing sailing vacations and stuff, and love sailing catamarans. It just depends. Depends where you are in life, where you are physically, how fit you are, financially where you are, if you can afford certain things, if you can afford the fuel, if you can afford stuff. Maybe you get a smaller power catamaran you can afford versus a bigger sailing catamaran because of those limitations that you have. It just really all depends. There are different ways of doing it. Hopefully this video gives you guys some ideas of the pros, the cons. We are seriously struggling, you guys. As we make this video, we still don't know if we would get a catamaran, what would it be? We're still going back and forth. It's kind of funny because we've never really made a list, so this is kind of helpful. We're gonna put it all into one now and actually see what are we thinking here? But it just...
One thing we are on the same page on is definitely we would like to get a big catamaran.
What is big?
Well, 60.
Yeah, 55 or up.
Yeah, 55 to 65 max.
Yeah, I think
that would be a good size.
Well, talk to us in a couple of months. I don't know. Put it in the comments what you guys are thinking. Would be nice to get an idea of how many of you are more leaning towards sail or power based on your intended use, so we kind of get an idea of for the next tours that we plan.
And also, if you guys have any other pros or cons on either one of them, put in the comments below, because I'm pretty sure we forgot some of them, but would love to hear them. All right.
Well, we'll see you guys later. Enjoy the outtakes. I have no idea what they're gonna look like. Rico told me I was intense.
All right, I'm gonna have a coffee now.
He said we should have had coffee and a tea, and I'm too intense.
Yeah.
I said I'm just energetic.
Oh, I make killer margaritas, so maybe we should just have 2 margaritas, and that would have actually leveled that whole thing out too.
No margarita, but I'll have some kind of a rum drink or a painkiller maybe.
Okay.
All right, we'll see you guys later.
Bye.
Sundowners for us. Bye. Well, this completes our tour. No tour. Whoops. Let's do the intro first.
Hang on. To make sure. It's not cleaning well. Do you think your thing cleans better?
Yeah, maybe.
No, it's also not.
First of all, we're gonna address a really common comment that comes up all the time. Oh, comment that comes up all the time.
On the channel. If both engines break, rowing is the only option. That is correct. You don't have a sail unless you have a kite you can fly.
I like that you read it with a straight face.
So because you put in bigger engines, it's not gonna work.
Really, really simple, you guys. Just check out. I got my Santa suit on. What are we giving away? What are we giving away? Special effects, baby. Special effects.
Oh, I had the same?
No, that was your point.
Yeah, yours too. Cheaper to
no
buy.
way.
Yeah.
That's why we're
married. So then
it's good that we know each other's passwords.
It doesn't recognize my face as yours.
One more time as a disclaimer, this video is made
You want me to say it?
Go ahead.
Quite honestly, like, already spitting, I must get excited. I think it's total BS.
I'm cutting this out, you guys.
Any
sailing catamaran versus power catamaran.
Yeah.
Which catamaran do you want to be?
Which catamaran I want to be?
Yeah.